Okay, so we'll get started here. I've got good news about the field trip. They, we will have an intern to show us around the, collections. This is just one of the aisles there. These are horned dinosaurs fossil. This is like the last horned dinosaur collection, I think, in the world. And so we will have an intern to show us around there, and then Dr. Eric Rickard, who's the mammologist there and the curator for vertebrates. He'll take us into their vertebrate collection and show us that, and tell us about that. And then after that, well, you're kind of free to go to the whole museum. I think there's a special exhibit on Jane Goodall that's there. And then this is the, Past Worlds exhibit. It's a big open area which has all kinds of fossils and things. And what I'll try to do is look over my photographs and find some of the species and things that we've talked about in class and make up a list, and then you can check those off to see if you've seen them. And then afterwards, probably mid-afternoon, probably by 3 o'clock, we should head over to the Red Iguana restaurant. And then we'll have dinner there. So what I would suggest is you bring a snack or something, because we won't probably get to dinner until maybe 4 o'clock.
Okay.
And so now you can get something to eat there at the museum. They have a little cafe kind of thing. Or if you want, I usually bring a energy bar or something like that, so just so you know how to plan. And I don't know, I think you can get a dinner for about $20 at Red Iguana, so you know what to bring. Okay, so we're going to 2.
Okay.
2 is much better for parking. It's really tight, especially with that big van to park at the Red Iguana 1. And I think the Red Iguana 2 probably holds twice as many people. I think the chances of having to sit outside and wait are less at Red Iguana 2. So I like them both, and they're within like a block or 2 of each other. But I just go to Red Iguana 2 because it seems easier.
Yeah.
So I think the food's the same.
Oh, good.
Okay, so today we still have to finish off. I think I've got 2 of the families of crocodilians to talk about. And then, I was gonna try to have the evolution exam ready today and to lecture on that, but I'm not gonna get to that until Monday. We'll do a Menti, and then we should get started on water relations today. Okay, any questions about anything? Remember, a week from today, your assignment's gonna be due to tell me what your specific project is gonna be. Okay?
Okay.
And maybe a few sentences too, not just the title, but a few sentences about what you're actually gonna do. Okay, and that'll help me, so then I can work with you, to help you fine tune the project and get it off to a good start. But I'd really like to have you have a pretty good idea, a strong idea of what you're doing before spring break, so that you can, use that time to work on it. And then I'll be gone the week after spring break, so you'll have a couple weeks there, that you can work on that. Okay, so
So are we presenting the student project or are you writing a paper?
for the project?
Yeah.
Basically, you're presenting it as a PowerPoint. Yeah, I should, I really should make you write a paper with it, but it seems like we've got a lot to do in this class, and we finish up, you present the project, you do have to write the abstract for it. And you have to create the project and present it as a PowerPoint. And then that's the week, what? Yeah, that's the week before finals. And I just don't want to dump a term paper writing project on you right before finals. So we won't do that. One option though, if people want to do that, is that we could set this up so that you can do a poster. And that would be a fun thing too, if you wanted to try that instead. That's nice, because then you have something afterwards, and if you do a good job, we can put it up in the hallway outside too. Okay. Something gain control of my computer here. There we go. All right, so here's crocodilians.
I saw you mention Menti. Are we doing a Menti meter too?
Today, yeah. Yep, we're gonna do one right before. I like to do one and ask you some questions about what we're going to talk about. So you think about it a little bit, you know, before I lecture on it. So now, as I recall,
We just finished alligator.
what's that?
I think that's about where we're at.
Yeah, this, I was just telling you, this is the Cuvier's dwarf caiman. We'll get to see this guy, I'm pretty sure, unless he's died in the last 2 years. But they have 2 of these down at the Living Planet Aquarium. And they're only about that big. They're not very big, but they're really interesting. We have one of the aquarists there that I got to know reasonably well. And she was showing me the training and stuff with them. They have these little balls that they put on the end of a stick. And then when they want to feed them, they move the ball over there so they can move the animals around with that. They do that with the tortoises at the Vogel Zoo too. That's pretty cool. So anyway, so now here's the second family. This is the Crocodilidae. And there's 3 genera. And I only list 2 here, I don't know, Crocodilus and Osteolaemus. There's 15 species of them. They're found in, there's a few, probably less than 100 in the Everglades and that go down onto the Florida Keys. There's some wonderful pictures I've seen at Key West, where before Key West really got big and, you know, expanded and developed, the American crocs used to come up and sun on the beaches there on the island. And then I've seen American crocs down here in Jalisco and in Costa Rica and in Panama as well. And then they can be pretty aquatic too. They find them swimming around in the ocean, like between these islands. And then we've got crocodiles over in Africa, especially Nile crocs. And then they're through India and the Malay archipelago. And then I've gotten to see freshwater crocs and saltwater crocs here in Australia. Enlarged 4th tooth on the lower jaw, exposed when the mouth is closed. So remember, on these guys, you don't see the lower teeth. This guy's actually pretty snaggletooth. But like a lot of the alligators, when you look at them, like this guy, you know, you don't see the teeth when the mouth is closed like that. But with these crocs, there's actually a notch there that, you know, the tooth goes up into. Okay, so here's an American croc. This is one that we had at the reptile gardens at the zoo where I worked at. And when I was down in Jalisco, Mexico, we visited this ranch. And this guy, where there was on a river, and he had 2 big American crocs. And he would feed them chickens, and they would come. There was only one when I was there, saw it, but he had raised them from little guys. I mean, they were wild crocs, But they would come up and take these chunks of chicken from him and he'd pat them on the head like they were pet dogs and stuff. And then here's a picture showing a comparison of an alligator and a croc. You can really see that tooth in there. Here's Nile crocs. Nile crocs get big. I mean, they get 15 feet long, something like that. I've seen them, you know, that roughly that size. They're found in what, Africa and Madagascar. These are my photographs of Nile crocs. This is from Masamara in Kenya. And we had a comparative physiology meeting in Kenya. It was great. It was in the National Wildlife Preserve. We had the scientific sessions in tents. They had generators to power up the projectors, you know, there. And then they had a bar there at the lodge at the hotel. And so I'd love to go over there and have a beer, and then I'd sit out on the deck and you could see all this wildlife. I mean, there were monitor lizards and there were Nile crocodiles and hippos and baboons and geckos. And, you know, I could have gotten a lot of great pictures just sitting there in the bar. Anyway, this guy was doing that. I think that's associated with thermal regulation, evaporative cooling for these guys. And what I had hoped to see, but of course didn't get to see, they have the big wildebeest migrations. Now, if you realize, like, you know, people call Yellowstone the American Serengeti. It's not close. We've got like 5,000 bison, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 bison. That wildebeest migration from Tanzania up into Kenya is a 1.5 million wildebeest. I mean, it's like going to a zoo. I mean, and there's just this stuff all over. It's just wonderful. If you ever get a chance to go to Africa, boy,
I've been to Kruger.
Oh, have you?
It's
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah. Kruger was great. Yeah, I spent a week down there and that, I really like that. I like Kenya even more though, Eastern Africa, because the landscapes there are so spectacular. You went to Olduvai Gorge and, you know, Ngorongoro Crater and Amboseli with the elephants, and then of course Masamara with the lions.
Yeah, that place is on my list.
Yeah, I would recommend, if there's one place to go to for seeing wildlife, I'd say East Africa is the place to go. I mean, I don't know if you realize this, but you know, the big extinction, the Pleistocene extinctions, those took place just about every place but Africa. So here in the United States, we just see a fraction of what used to be here. If you were here 20,000 years ago, you'd see a lot more stuff. And I mean, a lot more stuff like saber-toothed cats and sloths and camels. I don't know just exactly the times when those things disappeared, but it was, you know, while humans were here, that stuff was here. And, you know, and South America had, you know, Pleistocene extinctions, and Europe, and I think Australia too. But Africa, my totally amateurish hypothesis about this is that these animals in Africa, they co-evolved with people. And so they've had, you know, hundreds of thousands or more years to adapt to people, where when people spread out elsewhere, they, you know, it was like we were like an invasive species, you know, wiping out all kinds of stuff. Sort of like the Burmese pythons or the brown tree snakes of the world. Anyway, when they have these big migrations of the wildebeest, these crocodiles in the rivers, the wildebeest have to cross the rivers, and then they're really vulnerable. And they may get most of their food, you know, during those migrations. And I mean, you know, a guy like this, they can take a full-size wildebeest and have, you know, size of an elk or something, you know, and just flip it around. It's amazing. Okay, here's a saltwater crocodile. From Asia and Indo-Pacific area, Northern Australia. And these, we got to see these, when I was up in Northern Territory. And then here's Johnston's crocodile. This is the freshwater crocodile. These guys are pretty shy. These guys eat people. I mean, they really do. I mean, and now crocs used to, I don't think now it's a serious problem, but before World War II, I read the statistic that now crocs killed more people in Africa than all other wild animals combined.
Wow.
They found one wild croc that had bracelets from 20 women. And it's got, yeah. And a friend of mine, he was the ichthyologist or fish ecologist here before Ernest Keeley. He was in the Peace Corps over there, and he said that they had women that were taken, they'd go down to clean things, in the river and get water, and the crocs would grab them. Here's Siamese crocodile. This one was, I think, hatched at the Hogle Zoo, and I think it's probably still there, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah, there are two of them.
There's two of them, yeah.
Yeah. They're huge now.
They were about that big when I
What
photographed
the
them.
heck?
That was back around, what, 2000, something like that.
So they were born and raised there.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Wow.
And then dwarf crocodile, Australimus. We had one of these at the zoo where I worked at. It was a pretty manageable little animal. And then this is a really fascinating, I've never seen these in the field, but I have seen them at the National Zoo and at the San Diego Zoo. And these are gavials. And, the fish eaters apparently have the specialized adaptation. They've got lots of teeth, and then they have a really long, thin snout that they can move through the water pretty easily. And anyway, these guys are found, what? The gavial is found, India and in Asia here. And then the false gavials, the Tomastoma, they're found out here in the Malaysian archipelago. I wonder if I'll get a chance to see those.
At the Fresno Zoo, they're getting some tomistomas there.
Are they?
I don't know when, but they're working on an Asia exhibit and they're including some of those guys there.
They're a neat looking animal.
Yeah.
Some of them, I mean, I've got this one picture from San Diego Zoo. I'll show it to you in a second. Let's see, anyway, here's the false gavial. This is the Tomastoma. So, and then here's the gavial. This is the one from India and Asia there. The males develop these interesting snouts, this knob on the end. I don't know if it has to do with sound or if it's
a mating thing. I think it's like a mating attraction.
well, it's a sexual, yeah. It's sexual dimorphism, I think related to mating. I just haven't read enough about it to know what it actually is. Does it resonate the sound, or is it just a visual
I think
cue?
it's just a visual cue, if my research is right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that could be. I don't know. And then here's my picture from the San Diego Zoo. I think this thing looks almost like plastic model or something. Doesn't really unusual feel, but boy, what an interesting animal. Boy, you sure can see. I mean, you could definitely use these as inspiration for artist representations of these fossils. Oh, here's a great picture.
I really really want to see that. in
So
person.
here's parental care, you know, where all the babies are hanging out. And apparently you may have mixtures of, it's not just her babies that will be with her, but different females will help guard other females. So it's,
Oh, so it's like a communal nesting.
Wow, yeah,
there's
like-
females that lay their
yeah,
eggs.
daycare.
Are they all related? Like, are they families?
You know, I
Sisters
don't
or
know
something?
that, how closely related they are. I think they are. I think, I saw at the last World Congress, there was a talk about someone that was doing it. I think they were doing their work in Australia. And there's, you know, you see all these crocodiles and things, you know, along the banks of the rivers and stuff, but there's a real social structure underlying that. It's just not a random assortment of crocodiles. Okay, so most of the species of world crocodilians are in need of management. About 50% are endangered or vulnerable. When we were in Australia, they had just about hunted the saltwater crocs in Australia to extinction.
Oh,
And I remember when we were there, which was 1993, Rick Shine, who was our host, he said that when they started doing their field work, and that was back in the 70s, they would these elephant trunk snakes, file snakes, they would walk along. There were very few saltwater crocs there, and they would walk along like in bare feet, and they'd feel with their toes to feel the snakes. And one time he felt something, and he reached down, and it was a crocodile. And he said he took that as a sign from God. That was his chance. And so it was really funny, because when we had 20 of us there, he hosted us for a week of herping in the Northern Territory. And of course, all of these guys are very high motivated, very competitive herpers, and everybody's trying to find something. We go down, you know, to this lake. And, you know, all these herpetologists run down there trying to catch stuff, and they're trying to go, no. I don't think he wanted to lose, lose some of his guests. It was really funny. At night, we went out looking for, for the elephant trunk snakes along this river in Kakadu National Park. And there's one guy there, his name is Neil Ford, and he's short. And, you know, usually if you're going out to look for stuff, you don't want to go where everybody else looks, because then your chances of finding stuff are reduced. So he takes off like downriver, and the group is going upriver. So it's at nighttime. We look out with our flashlights, and we see all these eyes. And Neil is walking downriver, and all of these eyes. Like, Neil, come back. No, I want to go there. No, come back. Anyway, they actually trap crocodiles there if they have big ones. In fact, we were out one night, and we were going along the coast, along the north edge of Australia there in boats, and we found a Nile crocodile, or a saltwater crocodile trapped there. And it had a little saltwater croc that was trying to get to the chicken that was above the trap there. But they will take those, and they'll raise crocodiles, you know, for food. And you go into the grocery store there, and just like you'd buy a steak or something, you can buy a crocodile tail, or the meat from a crocodile tail. It's like pork, white, fairly dense meat. And we had really good meals with crocodile tail, but they were, you know, it's all in the seasoning, you know, in the sauces and things, yeah.
So on the last slide, I just thought about this. You were talking about how there's like a social structure with crocodiles.
Yeah.
Since they're so closely related to birds, do they have their own like pecking order? Like.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm sure they do. I don't know. I haven't read about this, but I'm sure that there's a social hierarchy there. I know, with a lot of lizards and snakes, there's definite social hierarchy, so I would think it's even more likely in alligators. So I think the two big threats for these guys are habitat destruction and overhunting. And overhunting, alligators in this country, they were an endangered species 30 years ago. Or when they started the endangered species program, that was one of the main species, because they've been hunted almost to extinction. And when they started protecting them, then they really came back, and they came back so well that now you can hunt them again. And that's one of the real successes, along with things like American eagles, the bald eagles, that American alligators are viewed as, if you control the hunting, you can really, recover a species like that. That's not true for all species, but it was true for those. We used to go to we went to this crocodile ranch while we were there. He wanted us to see that. And it was really interesting. They play rock and roll music to them all day long. Because when people are walking around and moving them, if they don't have the music and they get used to it, they get startled by the sounds of people. And then they'll jump in the water and hide, and so they get them used to the sound, and then they especially apparently like Eric Clapton.
I don't know who that is.
So here's a couple books that I found that have been good. This Crocodiles and Alligator book. I have that book. I don't think I have this one. And then I found out about this one a few years ago, but I haven't seen it.
Oh.
Okay, any questions about crocodilians? Let's see, what will we see in the way of crocodilians? You'll see a Deinosuchus skeleton,
Like the giant.
the giant one. Yeah, we will see that one tomorrow. It's cool. It's in the past lives, past worlds. And we should, unless they've died, we should see that Cuvier's caiman at the Living Planet Aquarium.
I saw both of them last year, so.
Oh, did you?
I'm pretty sure they should.
So they're probably, they should last decades. And then we saw, let's see. I think they might have. I don't know if they have any other crocodilians there or not. I don't recall. I'm trying to think that they might have something in the Asian exhibit, but those I think are monitors that they have up there. Anyway. Okay, so let's do a Mentimeter.
There are only 3 animals that actively hunt humans, and they're lions, polar bears, and saltwater crocs.
Well, now crocs do too.
Nile crocs?
Yeah, no doubt. In fact, when we were in Masamara, we hired a guide to take us around, and we were standing on the riverbank there, and the crocs were kind of circling around behind us, and our guide said, "It is time to go."
I have my thing timed out, so there's gonna be 2 limits on there.
Okay. What was the most surprising thing you learned from Dr. Peacock's evolution lectures, either the amphibians or the reptiles? Was there anything there that you found really interesting that you didn't know, or something that you were surprised? I was surprised by how poor of an idea I had of when the dinosaurs, which dinosaurs were there, you know? I mean, you're talking about what? A couple 100 million years, and I did it, and I still don't have a really good idea of what's where. But I found that really interesting when he talked about how Tyrannosaurus and the horned dinosaurs were right at the end of the Cretaceous. That was very helpful to me. I imagine you guys are gonna have different answers here. Yeah, the diversity is overwhelming, isn't it? I mean. Yeah, that's a really good point, just how diverse things were. It's not just a few fossils. Well, what, there's over 1,000 species of dinosaurs now described,
Yeah.
1,000. So think of how diverse that must have been. If the fossil record has 1,000, I mean,
Yeah, there's probably
and
way
100
more.
times as much as that. Yeah, the size of some things, right?
I then switched the slide and I put my answer in the first slide.
Me too.
Oh, is that right? Let's see. There we go. Yeah, how little today is extant compared to what used to live. That's it. Probably less than like 1% of all the species are here now. Yeah, and the position of crocs, much closer to birds than to the other reptiles, yeah. Yeah, I think if we were developing a classification scheme now, we wouldn't have the same system that was developed 100 or 150 years ago. Okay, so I think we've got everybody now. Okay, why is water important to amphibians and reptiles? You can answer this in general. It might help you to think about it. Why is water important to life? But that's not something that you often think a lot about. Yeah, I was thinking of this question more physiologically, but it is true that water is a necessary habitat component too. Okay, we got one more person to add. There we go. Okay, I will lecture on that in just a moment. Let me Okay, so now we're gonna talk about water balance. And so how do amphibians and reptiles gain? How do they add water to their bodies? And there's one real obvious answer, but that's okay, you can answer that. Drinking and absorption, okay, those are two of the four. Okay, yeah, water that you obtain from food. Okay, the only one that you don't have here is metabolic water. When they digest certain types of food, it releases water. And that's another thing. There are some, for example, desert reptiles that don't drink at all. They get all their water either directly by absorbing it, or they get it through this is really cool adaptations. I like this lecture a lot. Okay. How do amphibians and reptiles lose water? Okay, they use it for getting rid of nitrogenous waste, right? In oh, some of it is urea, and some it's uric acid, and in others it's ammonia. Evaporation, yeah, evaporation either across respiratory surfaces like the lungs or through the skin. Okay. Okay, you also they also lose some water through secretions and through when when they defecate, they can lose water too. Okay. I think that's it for the Menti. So let's,
They lose water through creating venom, like, is it
well, when they inject it, they do, yeah.
interesting?
Okay, so there's what, about 12 pages, 12, 13 pages to read in your textbook on this. The textbook was particularly good on these physiological ecology things, temperature and water. Poe is basically a physiological ecologist, so those chapters are well written in your book. So we talked about why water is important. Okay. 65 to 75% of reptiles of water, 75 to 85% of amphibians. I don't have a picture like this for an amphibian, but here you see it for a human, where, water is really the main component. We are mostly water. And that has a number of, effects. The hydration rate of an animal affects cell volume. Affects the concentrations of the solutes in the fluids. It affects the viscosity, of the fluids. And obviously then that's gonna affect the configuration of the organs. Okay? So then you can look at this little thing that shows examples of why you need water, from saliva, for circulation, to, eliminate waste. I mean, it's just, life evolved in water. It's just, it's just an essential part of what life is. Okay, so very important, especially in amphibians, but also in reptiles. This is an area that I think needs further study, but it's hard to do. It's fairly easy to take temperature measurements of animals. It's much more challenging to get water measurements, to get hydration levels and solute concentrations, and also to measure the environmental variables that are influencing, water transfer. So using a biophysical approach, modeling approach, is really the most appropriate and is a powerful way to do it, but most biologists don't have the adequate training to do that properly. Okay, so we can take the same kind of conceptual approach. Remember how when we were talking about temperature, we took that idea of a thermal budget? Here are the heat gains and here are heat losses. And then we can literally write an equation. We can actually measure it and solve that equation to, calculate what hydration levels would be or what water loss levels would be. So in terms of water balance, in terms of there's gains minus losses, and then whatever's the difference is basically what's stored, and that can be negative or positive. So the gains are from liquid water, so you can drink it or absorb it, right? Preformed water, which is the water that's like in food. And then metabolic water, which is water that, is generated, through metabolic processes, breakdown of foods. And then the losses are evaporation, either across the skin or from the lungs, in urine, getting rid of nitrogenous waste, in feces, and in secretions from salt glands. But I guess, you'd have to say venom glands there too. I should just change that, secretions from glands. And then we'll talk about osmoregulation and excretion, because that's really tied in, part of water balance. And then look at the dehydration tolerances of different herbs, because they vary tremendously. Some of the desert herbs have incredible dehydration tolerances. They can lose over half their body water and still survive. And if we could not do that. And then look at that, when we were talking about thermal budgets, we're looking at solving those in terms of minutes or hours. But the temporal scale for balancing water budgets can be over a year for things like desert tortoises. In droughts and things, they might go over a year without drinking. It's just amazing. So, and I basically developed this lecture from the textbook. So if you read the textbook, follow that pretty closely. So in terms of drinking, amphibians don't drink, okay? Most species of reptiles drink, but there are some desert snakes that don't need to drink at all. When I worked as a research assistant in Ken Cardone's lab at Washington State University, he had some diadem snakes from the Middle East. And when I got there, I asked, gee, why don't you have any water bowls, in with these snakes? And he said, well, they don't drink. So they just get their food, their water from their food. Collections of water, pools, puddles, things like that. Um, uh, I know a fellow that was studying rattlesnakes up in the Okanagan, up in Canada, and he said when the snakes came out of hibernation, one of the first things they do is in the springtime, they're in these lava flows, and they have those little pockets and depressions, and the snakes would come out and drink from those because they've been losing water. They over winter, like the hibernating rattlesnakes, they only lose about like 3% of their body weight, and almost all of that's water. Energetically, takes very little energy for them to get through the winter. Drinking, so they drink out of a body of water, but they can drink dew. In fact, if you keep certain lizards, you can have a bowl of water there and they won't drink from it, but you can spray it down, with a little spritzer type thing, and then you'll see like Anolis lizards will come over and drink the water droplets, either like off the side of an aquarium or off of a leaf. This is interesting, fog, that, these are, Namib desert vipers. And they flatten their body to increase the surface area, and they collect water droplets like that from condensing fogs. And so where these guys their range is constrained to the areas where the fog is there for them to get the water from. Okay, here's a really interesting one. This is known in several species of vipers. Rain harvesting behavior in, I think these are rock rattlesnakes, Protoscutulatus, and head between coils. They collect the rain in the coils, body flattened, channeling water into the valleys, and then they drink it. Fer-de-lances will drink, they're a viper from Central and South America. They drink water droplets off their coils. And then our Great Basin rattlesnakes here, there's a paper that's in, I think it's Herpetological Review, where someone down in Salt Lake City, they had a Great Basin rattlesnake in their, they had kind of an atrium, enclosed area in their house, and the rattlesnake lived in the outside enclosed area. And when it would rain, they would see it coil up and collect the water and drink it. And then one of my former PhD students was doing his sabbatical out here at the INL. And it was really interesting. We'd gone, this was in 2017. It was really a dry year. We went like 6 weeks or something without any rain at all. And then he was out there, he was following rattlesnakes, looking at where the females were gestating, the rookery areas. And he drove out there, and it was a rainy day, first rainy day he'd seen in weeks. And he was sitting in his truck waiting for the rain to stop. And then he thought, well, gee, maybe I ought to go out and look and just see what's going on. And he started walking around out there, and he saw multiple snakes that were collecting water on their bodies and drinking them. And this is a picture he shared with me in that. If you want to get into the details of this, you can get into the role of scale wettability on rain harvesting behavior. And I guess they worked with some engineers or chemists or something and worked on the details of the skin that allows that. Tortoises will use this one here, well, the African hinchback tortoise, the rain will hit there, and then it collects on the shell, and they have a water collecting posture, and then the water drains from the shell down to their mouth so that they can drink it.
Wow.
And then our desert tortoises have been observed actually before rainfall, going at the bottoms of slopes and digging things. Then it rains and the water collects there, and then they can drink it.
Hmm.
And I also read an article about coyotes, and this was in prairie dog areas, but this guy was watching a coyote. And you know how right before a big thunderstorm, you can feel that pressure change and you know the storm is coming. And he saw this coyote responding to that, and it went over to a prairie dog burrow and it dug a little trench into the prairie dog burrow opening. And it just sat down and waited. And then the thunderstorm came through, and the water channeled down and flushed out the prairie dogs, and the coyote picked him up.
That's so cool.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
That is really neat.
They're smart.
Yeah. Animals tend to be pretty smart at what they need to do to survive, you know? This is an agamid lizard. It's the equivalent of our horned lizards, but it's from Australia. And they have side channels, skin channels, that channel the water via capillary action to the mouth. And then they can drink the water. Cutaneous uptake, most amphibians can uptake water across the skin. And there may be regional differences in the permeability of the skin. This is a little western toadlet. And see this area right here? That's called the pelvic patch. And it's a modified area. It can take up water much faster than the other parts of the skin. And you'll notice that I don't know if you've ever seen frogs or, you know, toads sitting in a pool or sitting on the edge of a lake or something like that. They'll be evaporating water off their back, but they can more than replace it from this area coming from the pelvic patch. Okay. All right, well, we'll stop there, and we'll stop on spadefoots, and then we'll talk about that. I'll probably finish this up on Monday, try to get us back on schedule.
We're meeting at 2 today, right?
That's the plan, yeah. Why don't you come by my office?
Okay.
We'll do that. I called to see if they'd fixed the computers, and they can't get somebody to they turned off the network access. If computers aren't used for 6 months, they turn off the network too. So,
I guess it makes sense.
and I've asked them to turn it back on, and they haven't been able to get the people to turn it on.
Yeah.
But we'll meet then and just see what you guys have got. Okay?
I've never seen it.
Well, I didn't know it at
Same
Flash
amount.
in the United
And then
States, but
on the north.
myself.
See you later.
Bye.